Consider Route 1 Fusion for your dealership's digital retailing. Customers can build vehicle financing options online with estimated payments, trade-ins, and you can even showcase optional protection products. Faster process, elevated sales, more satisfied customers. Visit route1.com/fusion to connect for a demo today.
Welcome to this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive for the fourth week of April 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. This week, we're talking about Stellantis placing its bets on 4 core brands, GM shelving its electric pickup plans, Elon Musk finally admitting Tesla cars will need hardware upgrades for self-driving, and more. Joining me as always, Michael Martinez, who covers Ford and the UAW for Automotive News. Mike, welcome back to Weekend Drive.
Thanks, Kel.
And Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru for us. Larry Legend, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Kel. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Everybody good? All right.
All right, let's get to it. So, Larry, as our former Fiat Chrysler reporter here, you get to start with your take on Stellantis' big news of the week. Reuters reports that the automaker is focusing investments on just 4 brands: Jeep, Ram, Peugeot, and Fiat. What's the strategy here?
I feel like I should introduce myself. Hi, my name is Larry, and I used to be a Fiat Chrysler reporter. Now you guys go, hi, Larry.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
As a recovering Fiat Chrysler reporter, the strategy is actually very familiar. It's the same strategy that Fiat Chrysler tried a little earlier in 2014. The problem with Stellantis now is that they have too many brands, and they've recognized that they have too many brands. But the issue is what to do about that. Now, what they've decided to do is they're going to focus on 4 key brands: Jeep, Ram, Fiat, and Peugeot. And they're going to let the other 10 brands try and fend for themselves a little bit, live on the edge. They're not going to disinvest, but they're not going to invest as heavily in those other 10 brands as they are in their 4 core brands. You know, on the surface, smart, right? You want to put your money where your sales are, where your products are, where your volume is. But what you're doing is you've got too many brands. You're weakening those other ones, just like Lancia and Alfa Romeo and Citroën and Opel in Europe. And here, Dodge and Chrysler, to a lesser extent, Alfa Romeo and Fiat, both of which are rounding errors when you compare them to Jeep or Ram. This is a similar strategy to what they tried in 2014, where they were going to focus their investment on where their money is. And it makes sense on paper. It weakens their overall portfolio.
Now, Larry, despite this news, it does sound like CEO Antonio Filosa wants to stick with all 14 brands for now. But should Stellantis just start dropping brands? Why leave them there if you're going to stop investing in them?
Actually, it gets very hard to shut down brands when you have franchised auto dealers. So the best thing that he could probably do is try to sell a couple brands, right? If he could move a couple of his more well-known brands to another automaker, that would probably be ideal. They get some cash infusion. They could keep Jeep and Ram, their most profitable lines. But I don't think that's in the cards right now. Now, that could all change if we start letting Chinese automakers come in, right? Chinese automaker comes in and can buy Chrysler or Dodge just as a turnkey operation and rebadge their own vehicles. That suddenly gets very attractive. But they can't shut them down because it's too expensive.
Mike, what's your reaction to this?
Well, Larry touched on my concern here is that you don't see the name Dodge and Chrysler. And I think under Carlos Tavares, there were a lot of concerns, rightfully so, that he maybe didn't understand the significance or the importance of parts of the North American market to the overall success of the company. And I hope Antonio Filosa understands the importance of Dodge and Chrysler here in the States. maybe not from a profitability standpoint, but just from the standpoint of this is what our customers know. They don't know Stellantis. Most of them still call it Chrysler. If you look at profitability, it's proven that you can make some money on Dodges without a whole lot of investment. You just throw a bigger, louder engine in it, put a Hellcat in it, right? And you have this community of enthusiasts that is very brand loyal. And I worry that under this plan, if they're not investing in those brands or they just get, hand me down powertrains or rebadged versions of other brands, that they'll lose some of what makes them special. And that only really matters to customers here, which is a small slice of the overall company, but it'll be a tough look. And then you're going to have the whole union angle if they do, disinvest in a lot of the American brands, and, it may lead to plant closures, but not saying it will, but it's a thing to worry about. So yeah, some concerning parts, but it does come back a little bit to what we talked about last week with Nissan and addition by subtraction. Yeah, on the surface, if you have a whole bunch of stuff and people aren't buying everything on the list, maybe cut some of the low performers.
We've seen this movie before, haven't we, Mike?
Sure.
Well, let's shift to GM. Mike, the automaker is shelving its electric pickup plans. Seems similar to what Ford has already done with the Lightning. Can we say at this point that the battery electric full-size pickup thing is over, at least for now?
Probably. And we've touched on it before. I think Larry's made the point that when it comes to full-size EV pickups, these automakers were trying to offer people more expensive versions that didn't do as much as the gas variants, right? They can't tow or haul as much. The battery just drains when you have something in the bed. So it was a tough sell from the beginning for that segment. And at the same time, for the Fords and GMs of the world trying to get into it, the production costs were just simply too high. Maybe GM's case is a little bit different because they took the strategy of waiting, letting Ford and others get to market first so they could develop that standalone platform. So they're probably losing less money. They're probably a little bit more efficient than the Lightning was, for example. But I think this is GM recognizing reality and saying that moving forward, this isn't the products or the types of products we need to be spending our money on. And, whether it was the CEOs missing the mark on the segment or just the production costs or the MSRP costs, these were very expensive vehicles that people couldn't afford. And the nail in the coffin was the Trump administration getting rid of the federal tax credit. So really you have a number of factors that have all collided at once to make these products not quite viable. But again, getting back to that point, GM, in hindsight, maybe did the smart thing to wait it out a bit and develop their own platform. That's why you're not seeing them discontinue the trucks as of today, like Ford did. The Lightning's gone. They're not making anymore. GM's still making its trucks. It's just allegedly not planning to do updated versions of them. So, maybe they got part of it right, but overall, I'm not sure anybody in the industry got the EV truck thing right yet.
What about that Volume King, the Cybertruck?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Listen, I said this from the beginning. Design is subjective, but that thing was just god awful. It looked awful. But again, you talk about Tesla, you talk about Rivian, to try to get a little serious here. Those were more lifestyle products. They weren't for real truck people. They weren't meant to do what trucks actually do. They're status symbols. They're lifestyle. So maybe a different category.
Yeah.
Now, Larry, GM has already invested billions in EV development. What does it mean to just shelve these trucks?
As Mike pointed out, they're not pulling the plug. They're just not going to invest as heavily to try and update them to keep them fresh. It's a good strategy. I mean, you got out a little ahead of your skis with this product in terms of where you were with consumer demand and where they were with capability. Who knows? I mean, if gas goes high enough, these and every other EV could get really attractive really fast. We're dependent on on another industry, the oil and gas industry, that has a heavy impact on our sales. And if things go haywire there, it'll change our demands.
There's one more point I'd make really quick here. And not saying the executives, the product planners at these companies are without blame, but it was a tough environment. If you think about 5 years or so ago when they were coming out with this product, because you didn't really get a real sense of the market because you had COVID, you had the supply chain shortage, and really anything any automaker was putting out, they were receiving intense demand for months, years long wait lists, right? So
Yep.
all these companies sort of got this false sense for the demand. So they went even further into upping investment and upping production targets, particularly for these trucks. And again, in hindsight, we found that demand was more of a mirage than reality, right? So, not saying they're without blame, but it was a tough market to try to come out with vehicles in back then.
Mike, there's a new study from Boston Consulting Group that while automakers probably rushed in too fast on mass market electric vehicles, the bigger risk might be doing a 180 too fast in the opposite direction. How big a risk is that in your mind?
I mean, that's fine to say, but I'm not sure there's an automaker out there that's doing a complete 180. I know we had all these massive write downs, but at the same time, the automakers that are taking these write downs are still investing in some form of electrification. Obviously, they're upping hybrid and EREV development. They're still coming out with electric vehicles. Look at, again, Ford's plan for its UEV platform. It's going to be completely different, or so they say, from that first wave with the Mach-E and the Lightning. So it's not that automakers are completely abandoning it. If they were, that would be the wrong choice because, especially in the United States, we're under a system where the executive branch gets to dictate a lot of regulation and policy that affects the auto industry. And that could change as soon as every 4 years. And we've seen that happen 3 cycles in a row now, where it's just been this wild pendulum swing back and forth. So you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket either way. So I think what we're witnessing now is an industry that's trying to hedge its bets and is trying to be able to pivot more quickly if something changes, and then offer that wide swath of pure EV for certain use cases. Because we know EVs are great for certain use cases, just as gas and diesel are, and the hybrids are too. So I think they're taking a much more pragmatic approach as opposed to rushing in full bore like they did 5-6 years ago.
Larry, what are your thoughts?
I hate it when Mike makes sense. Makes me feel bad. No, really. So he's absolutely right, and but there is also a danger of, as Boston Consulting says, going too far. We are in a spot because it's not just us in the United States or in North America, right? We are part of a global economy and a global automaking world, right? And China, if you looked at some of the innovation coming out of the Shanghai Auto Show this week, some of the battery tech announcements, they were mind-blowing. If you haven't gone and looked, go read Hans's story about that. Some of the energy densities that they've come up with and the recharge rates that they've come up with, they're going to be on par, if not better than gasoline. Now, you still got the infrastructure issues, certainly in this country, and the distances, et cetera. That's life-changing stuff coming over there. And if we stick our head in the sand, overall, that's going to hurt us 5, 10, 15 years down the road. We're going to be way behind.
Interesting stuff. Coming up, we'll talk about the growing pessimism in all corners of the auto industry about the future. And we'll look at Elon Musk's admission that many drivers who want full self-driving are going to need a hardware upgrade. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Some automakers raced to go all in on EVs before market headwinds pushed them into an about-face. Now, a new report suggests that the bigger risk may be pivoting back too fast.
If they guess right and index one way or the other, and they get it right, they could be even more profitable, but they could also be bankrupt.
On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, a conversation with Eric Jesse, Managing Director at Boston Consulting Group. He explains what BCG is hearing from automakers and suppliers as they try to stay profitable through an uncertain transition. I'm Molly Boygon. Join me on Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Route 1 Fusion is an expanded digital retail solution built to enhance your dealership's customer engagement and improve the results of your online efforts. Many customers expect a fast, online-friendly experience and prefer clarity early in the process, especially if they have a vehicle to trade. So ask yourself, are your current digital retailing tools helping shoppers understand their trade-in value and helping your team move deals forward faster? With a subscription to Fusion, you can benefit from its trade-in valuation feature that empowers customers to estimate the value of their current vehicle early in the process. This helps customers arrive in-store better prepared, make expectations around payments and equity more realistic, and move conversations and decisions faster. The result is higher quality leads, more productive interactions, and a smoother transition from online to in-store. And trade-in valuation is just one example of how Route 1 Fusion can expand your digital retail experience. Fusion also supports other features that include appointment scheduling so customers can view your availability and book a time. Pre-qualification tools with subscription provide quick, credit-based payment options, and production product presentations allow you to present products earlier to help customers explore their options. Schedule a personalized demo to see how Fusion can help generate more opportunities from your online traffic. Visit route1.com/fusion to connect with Route 1 today.
Welcome back to this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Kellen Walker, joined by Larry Bellaquette and Michael Martinez. So, Mike, the Automotive News Confidence Index dropped to 55.6 this quarter. That's the lowest since we started tracking it last summer. What's driving all this pessimism?
Well, there's a lot. And as you can imagine, the Iran war has a lot to do with it and the resulting price hikes in terms of oil and gas. You know, we survey every corner of the business, and every corner of the business was more pessimistic than they were in Q4, mainly because their prices have gone up. And I think the concerning thing was there's not a whole lot of people out there that expect the next 6 months to get much better.
Larry, we asked executives what makes them optimistic about the next 6 months. The top answer was nothing. That's pretty bleak. What are your thoughts?
Unless peace breaks out and there's a kumbaya moment between Iran and the United States and the Trump administration and Israel and Lebanon, I concur with their assessment. I don't think there's a lot we can look forward to. Think about this, right? We're just starting to see fuel prices rise because of how long it takes for oil futures to turn into the physical price of oil that gets delivered and gets refined. We are just on the cusp of that. Now, we've talked about 2007, what happened in 2007 a couple of times previously. But the rate, if we adjust for inflation, the rate that fuel got up to at that point was about $6.30 a gallon. That in today's dollars. So we're not there yet. Most of the United States is not there yet, but we're on the way. It's going to get really ugly. So fuel costs are money that just comes straight off the top for working people, right? If they're paying more at the gas pump, they have to pay less somewhere else. And when groceries go up because diesel goes up, when all your costs go up, something's got to give. And that means putting off large purchases like automobiles, delaying service. It's going to get bad.
Mike, automakers took the biggest confidence hit. What's weighing on them specifically?
Well, they told us prices, and I mean prices from the standpoint of ATPs, that they recognize that vehicles cost too much and that's hurting their demand, but also the margins, the prices in terms of the margins they're getting on those vehicles. They're concerned about that as well. And another area they called out, interestingly, was financial distress for the supply community. There was, I think, nearly 2/3 of respondents mentioned they were either very or somewhat concerned about their supply chains, which I think if you ask the supply chains, they'd be surprised to know that the automakers are voicing concern for them. But it's certainly an area that is leading a lot of folks to be more pessimistic about the industry.
The new name for purchasing is thoughts and prayers, by the way.
And Larry, finally, let's talk about Elon Musk's admission this week. He said Tesla vehicles will need hardware upgrades to achieve full self-driving. Why is this a big deal?
Well, the too long didn't read version of this is because he lied. He's been promising full self-driving to Tesla buyers. And now we get to the point, we figured out it's not going to be software. It's going to take hardware. And yes, it's going to take what the other automakers have done, what Waymo has done. We're not going to be able to cut corners and cut costs like we promised. I mean, if I had paid for FSD 10 years ago,
I'd be tight right now.
$10,000.
It was like $10,000. I would be tight right now.
Yeah. So, you can see why this is kind of a big deal.
Mike, zooming out a bit, what do you think legacy automakers are watching with Tesla's all-in approach to self-driving tech?
I mean, they're watching to see if it'll eventually pan out, right? I think they're probably just looking at this with the mild bemusement that they've looked at a lot of what Elon's done for a long time now. You look at a lot of the major players amongst legacy automakers, and they're not taking anywhere close to the same route. They're taking a much more, again, pragmatic, stair-step approach in terms of having level 2, level 3, level 4, and not beta testing on their consumers. This is a weird one because, on one hand, you do feel for folks that were told that they'd have this technology with just a software upgrade. But at the same time, I don't know that you should feel that bad for them, because how can you, I guess, with Elon's track record of missing deadlines and not doing exactly what he says in the fashion in which he originally says it, I wonder how folks can continue to trust stuff like this, where the evidence has just constantly piled up that it's either never going to happen or it's going to happen way later. So again, I think if you're a legacy automaker, you're not trying to model exactly what he's doing here. Obviously, there's the situation, the fact that he revolutionized the industry. He made EVs cool. He made all the automakers scramble to catch up and invest tens of billions of dollars. But when it comes down to the specifics, particularly with self-driving, I don't think a majority of the industry is looking to him as a leader on this. They're taking very different paths.
Good stuff, as always. Mike and Larry, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Kel. It's always great to spend our weekend with you.
Thanks, Kel.
That's all for this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on brand strategies, EV plans, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. Come back Monday for a conversation with Boston Consulting Group's Eric Jesse about how automakers are trying to navigate electrification in an unpredictable market.
It is almost always advantage to be first, because market shares don't tend to shift that quickly. And so if you can get there and become the known nameplate, your share becomes a lot stickier.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.